Open letter to Gary Aldrich. Dear Mr. Aldrich, a valued friend who is also a Korean War vet, former CIA employee, and true American patriot shared a letter with me written to him by you. This letter was an attempt to solicit funds for your Patrick Henry Foundation for Individual Liberty. Other than a good laugh shared by me and my friend, I found this letter so insulting that I felt compelled to post this response online to expose you as the liar and traitor that you are. To do this requires some basic knowledge of the current geopolitical arena, a decent grasp of 20th century history, and critical thinking and deductive reasoning skills of a second grader. Let's start with page 1, paragraphs 3 and 4. You claim that your only motives are to expose politicians that are putting us in danger by aligning with violent criminals that hate our country and all it stands for. It would be comical, if not so pathetic, how you plagiarize the exact same lines George W. Bush used as justification for 2 illegal wars of conquest based on lies. It is the actions of a right-wing conspiracy of which you are a self-proclaimed proud member that has caused our great nation to lose respect worldwide, caused the death of over 5,000 U.S. soldiers, countless women, children, and civilians in Iraq and Afghanistan, plundered our national coffers, and put us and future generations in massive debt, and made war criminals out of every American taxpayer under Section 52 of the International Criminal Courts Act. These are things that spawn hate for us across the entire planet. You also claim to have extensive information and experience vital to Americans. Question: if this information is so crucial, wouldn't a true patriot be on his horse like Paul Revere? I seriously doubt he was asking for donations as he rode out to warn the Minutemen the British were coming. Now there is a real American patriot, giving of himself without hesitation or asking for money. I also know hundreds of researchers and investigators who have never earned a penny and have made countless personal sacrifices in their attempts to restore the Republic. But let's look at some of the right's activities to show how deceitful you are. How about Bush Sr. and his thwarting of the JFK murder? Thwarting the investigation into the JFK murder, or his call for a new world order or one world government. It doesn't sound like the right is too concerned about our sovereignty. What about the massive waves of right-wing legislation, including H.R. 1955 and S. 1959, which combined with other bills and national security presidential directives have completely destroyed our Constitution and Bill of Rights? Wasn't it a Republican, Jane Harman, that sponsored H.R. 1955? What are you doing to stop her? How about all of the released documents, including Northwoods, Rex 84, Garden Plot, and Cable Splicer? I'm sure you're privy to these as you are a former FBI agent. You see, Mr. Aldrich, the domestic enemies to our republic don't have any party lines, nor do they reside within the boundaries so clearly defined in our founding documents. Left, right, liberal, conservative, Republican, and Democrat are all paradigms designed to dupe the populace, and any informed citizen is aware of this. So why aren't you trying to stop all of them? I'd like to know. I think you're going to sit down in your wet spot and kiss their traitorous asses. After all, birds of a feather. But let's move on to paragraphs 5 and 6. The compelled whistleblower, who must reveal what mainstream media won't. It doesn't take a genius to see what a farce this claim is, when on page 3, item 3, near the bottom, you cite your reports to mainstream pundits like the disrespectful and cowardly Hannity and Combs, the dopehead Rush Limbaugh, and Mike Reagan, who on his radio show openly called for the murder of 9/11 truth activist Mark Dice and even offered to pay for the bullets. Wait a minute. Doesn't that define him as a terrorist? Better send him to Gitmo without a lawyer, a trial, or even charges. We can just waterboard a confession out of him. I suggest you study the Magna Carta. It's what our legal system is supposed to be based on. And you really are making poor choices of journalists to help spread your message. Oh yeah, and you need generous support to make sure all Americans hear the truth. Ever heard of the internet? It's that thing your masters, the Rockefellers, have introduced a bill to destroy. No wonder, since it is a more reliable source of information and news than mainstream. Anyway, you can reach millions of people for a low monthly access fee. Oh, wait a minute, I get it. You're subject to scrutiny by researchers, patriots, and well-informed Americans. I notice there's no website anywhere on your letter. You also claim it's your goal to expose the truth. What a laugh. If all Americans knew the truth, you and your cohorts would be running from a lynch mob. Let's move on to page 2, paragraph 3. You speak of the men who blew up the Murrah building as if you know who they are. Well, Mr. Aldrich, I'd like to know, and I think a couple 100 million other Americans would like to know also. You see, I'm a journeyman ironworker, and I know a truck bomb did not sever those columns, just like I know the 9/11 Ground Zero columns were not cut during cleanup. Yet, just like the 9/11 evidence, it was quickly shipped off and hidden from the public view by the same company, Controlled Demolition. Look up their website. They claim to have the expertise to deal with sensitive Department of Defense assignments. Does that include false flags? And since you are the one so close to these investigations and have all the extensive information, I ask you to explain to America the following. Why the FBI agents responding to the scene told reporters they drove 100 miles an hour to get there and assist. But a simple search of credit card records revealed a receipt for a hotel room the night before. And why none of the ATF agents were in their offices that morning. And lastly, and most importantly, why the children in the daycare center were not evacuated if the ATF knew of some danger. America's waiting for your answers, Mr. Aldrich. Now on page 3, item 2, you claim to have continued the investigation into the Clintons. So please explain why they are not in jail awaiting trial for fraud, murder, drug running. Are you incompetent? Just Google Clinton's dead friends or Stanley and Peter Paul. And you promised to remain active in the hallways and conference rooms of our capital, exposing who our politicians are cohorting with. Does that mean you're going to expose the American-Israeli Political Action Committee, the Project for the New American Century, the Council on Foreign Relations? How about the controlled media? How about the Zionist infiltrators shaping our foreign policy? Are you going to arrest Bush and Cheney for war crimes? How about Chertoff for thwarting the investigation into the '93 World Trade Center attack? How about the criminals in the Federal Reserve? In conclusion, portraying yourself as aligned with the Founding Fathers is an insult to them, every true American patriot, every victim of every false flag, and every soldier that gave his or her life for your right to spew the shit contained in your letter. And you and your cohorts will carry a burden of shame to the gallows when America finally wakes up and rights herself. P.S. $75 for a signed copy of a book I wouldn't wipe my ass with? Your autograph isn't worth squat unless it's at the signatory to a plea bargain. See you on the gallows, traitor.